Welcome, ladies, to week 5. We are going to be discussing chapter 4 of Ruth, the last chapter. I hope you were all able to read through chapter 4 and do your own soak study observations of the chapter. Alrighty. Let's just go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so our first assignment was chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. And the Bible reads, Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat there. When the kinsman redeemer had mentioned came along, Boaz said, Come over here, my friend, and sit down. So he went over and he sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, Sit here. And they did so. Then he said to the kinsman redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our brother Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line. I will redeem it, he said. Then Boaz said, On the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabitess, you acquire the dead man's widow in order to maintain the name of the dead from his property. At this, the kinsman redeemer said, Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Okay. So, verse 1, he knew, I kind of observed that, it's like he knew exactly where to find this kinsman redeemer sitting at the gate. Some interesting information about the gate is that the gate was an important place or structure in the city. It was a gathering place for the elders of the city would sit and discuss matters of the city or decide legal matters. Or also it was a place of doing business and transactions, because there was a lot of flow going back and forth and so forth. In verse 2, Boaz gathers 10 elders as he's gathering up witnesses to witness this basically this business transaction that he's going to be discussing with the next kinsman. Verses 3 and 4, Boaz is discussing the situation with the next kinsman and letting him know that he is the next kinsman in line, and what his responsibility is as far as the next kinsman. Some observation with that was the fact that when he gathered up the 10 elders, or what I found, it was the way the Bible reads. It's like, hey, you 10 men, you come sit here. They obeyed. they did exactly what he said, which would kind of indicate that Boaz was a man of good, of good standing, or probably maybe was an elder himself, or a prominent businessman that everyone respected. The fact that they did what he asked them to do. Uh, he kind of also is showing his authority in handling the matter for Naomi and Ruth. Um, I was I had mentioned, I think mentioned this last week. Roy had given me this commentary, and so it lists some characteristics of elders um, that would be sitting there at the gate. One characteristic is that most elders were senior members of important families. Also, too, they could be wealthy. Uh, Another characteristic was they were good speakers, good negotiators. Uh, Another characteristic is that they were very well respected by the community. Uh, they held themselves to a higher standard, higher moral standard uh, than others. Um, More details are about the characteristics of an elder back then. You can find throughout chapters 19 through 25 of Deuteronomy. Speaks more and describes more of what some of the duties of the elders were that would be sitting at the gate. Um, let's see. Okay. Sorry, reading my notes. Sometimes I can't read my own notes. All right. Let's see. I have a note here to read. I think okay, yeah, this is a little more about I think the whole kinsman, the selling of the property, and how all of that kind of works from this commentary. See, it says two general possibilities emerge when the various pieces of the puzzle are fit together. The first is that Elimelech sold the field. Oh, okay. Prior to leaving Moab, Naomi has the right to redeem the field, but she cannot afford it. She's selling or transferring her right of redemption to a near kinsman. This scenario is reminiscent of the law found in Leviticus 25:25. If a fellow countryman of yours becomes so poor he has to sell part of his property, then his nearest kinsman is to come and buy back what his relatives has sold. A second scenario, the second is that Naomi owned the field because her husband and two sons had died. Since the harvest was now over, she could reclaim it from squatters. Due to her poverty, she was selling it to a kinsman redeemer for a purchase price. The scenario is similar to the story of Jeremiah, whose cousin Hanamel asked him to buy a field from him. This is Jeremiah 32:6 through 15. This is just, I guess, more explanation as to, you know, Naomi is spoken of them being in poverty because they are having to glean the fields and stuff like that. But then yet here, she has property. Some explanations are, as I just read, is that she owned the property, but because they left Moab and left the property unattended, uh, squatters or other people tended to the fields while she was gone. And then now that she's back, she had to wait till after the harvest to reclaim her property to be able then to sell it because of her poverty level. Um, so then, okay, let's move on to verses 7 through 12. Okay, so okay, I'm missing some comment, missing some other. Oh, okay. Uh, I knew there was something missing. Verse 6. Basically, okay, so Boaz he has explained to the kinsman redeemer about the property and all of this kind of stuff. And it seems like, he at the beginning he doesn't say anything about him having to marry Ruth, or that, Ruth is part of the package until they're at the end, until after he accepts. And then the redeemer refuses. There's some, scenarios possible as to why he refused. One observation is that most likely because she was a Moabite, and you know they weren't they weren't supposed to marry outside of their their kind. Um, so it could be the fact that Ruth was a Moabite, that it was like no, because he didn't want to take any chances by having to marry a Moabite. Or it could be another observation would be that he probably already had a wife and family, and by him marrying Ruth, then he'd be jeopardizing his own inheritance to his sons. That, adding this property to it, then it would have to be everything would have to be split among Ruth's offspring, and then the ones that he already has. But we don't know that for sure because it's nothing. But just according to customs back then, these were some scenarios as to the reason why he may have refused. Okay, verses 7 through 12. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the kinsman redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from the town records. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders Then the elders and all those at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrath, no, Ephrathah, and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." Okay. So the kinsman redeemer has refused, and he has basically given his permission. So the next kinsman has given permission to Boaz to buy the property, to be responsible as the kinsman redeemer for Naomi and for Ruth. And so uh In verse 7, it basically is letting us know what the custom at that time is as far as business transactions. That the removing of the sandal demonstrates that the party is surrendering his responsibility, his right to the ownership of the property or to his duty as kinsman redeemer. And as it says, this is how most business transactions were finalized and were done. Um, we had mentioned earlier, this is all being done at the gate. There are witnesses there. They've gathered the 10 elders. So Boaz basically pronounces to everyone in within the gate area. Um, I kind of look at it, it's the contract. They didn't have written contracts like we have where they can be when you sign, they're notarized and witnessed and all this kind of stuff. So basically, what's going on here is Boaz is reading the contract out loud. He's uh, these are all the terms and conditions of this contract. You are all witnesses that this is what's happening. That you see the next I gave the next kinsman his right to do what's right by Naomi, and he has refused by giving me his sandal. I'm accepting the sandal because I'm accepting the responsibility of the next of being the kinsman redeemer. That I'm going to purchase the property. I'm going to marry Ruth, the widow, and that way so the family name can be continued on. So basically this is just an outgoing of this contract between of the kinsman redeemer type situation, and everyone is a witness to it. And then the elders that are there that are witnessing this, they offer blessings. um Okay. Some things about the blessings that the elders give. Uh, let's see. It starts in verse 11. The first blessing: we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah. So this first blessing. Okay. I got to get my commentary out again. It says it so much more eloquently than I can, so I just assume read it, read it to you, then try to explain it. All right. Okay. Sorry for the major pause. I'm trying to find my place. Okay. Okay. So there are basically three blessings from in verses 11 and 12 that the elders give. The first blessing is of a national type blessing. It is addressed basically to Israel in general. The second blessing is a local blessing uh, to the city Bethlehem. And then the third blessing is more of a tribal blessing that refers to the tribe of Judah. Basically, the first blessing is addressed to Boaz, and it is a pronounced blessing that is for any Israelite groom, uh, that the woman that he is marrying that she'll be uh, prosperous as far as having many children. And kind of like Rachel and Leah, the comparison is to Rachel and Leah, who had many children and helped build the nation of Israel. So that blessing is to Boaz as he, takes Ruth as his wife. That they will have many, many children to carry on the name. Um, the second second blessing is also addressed to Boaz, but this blessing is actually for the offsprings, the son, the possible future sons that Boaz may have, that they'll be prosperous, they'll be wealthy, they'll be men of good standing in the city of Bethlehem. That uh, that kind of blessing that they will that they'll be good, upright, just good men. And then third, the third blessing to the tribe of Judah. This one, uh, from what I have, from the commentary that I'm reading, it speaks of that Boaz is, because it talks about how, let's see, it says, let's see, famous, and then through the offsprings the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Um, you would have to go back and read about uh, Tamar and Judah. Basically, okay, I've lost my place. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, you would have to go back and read in Genesis 38 1 through 30. Basically, it's a comparison of Ruth with Tamar. Tamar, let's see, Tamar had married her brother-in-law, but he refused to fulfill his duty, and he was put to death by God. Then she was denied marriage to Shelah, the next in line. So basically, it all boils down to Tamar ends up then deceiving her father in law Judah by pretending to be a prostitute, and she conceived and gave birth to Perez and Zerah. Uh, for me, I believe that the comparison here is the fact that the line that Boaz uh, came from a lineage to where it wasn't, how do I guess, appropriate, or uh, what is the word I'm looking for? Traditional. That's in a traditional sense, where it was mother, father, and that Tamar had to, because her husband died and she was childless, had to go and do all this, had to manipulate and go through all of this to get a son. And then kind of the same situation here is happening as well. And so it's a blessing, because Boaz would not be there to be able to do his duty if Tamar had not done what she did, I guess. So anyway, so that's kind of an explanation, I guess, as to why the elders said what they said about may your family be like that of Perez, um, because of how that situation was not a traditional situation in that sense. Okay, moving on to verses 13 through the end of the chapter. Well, because I'm going to read from that some more. Uh, any comments? Okay, moving on. Verses 13 through the end of the chapter. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter in law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son. They have named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This, then, is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Aminadab, Aminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. Okay, so um, back up to verses 13. Verse 13. The deal has been made. It's been agreed upon. It's been witnessed. It's been pronounced. Uh, now, basically, verse 13 is the follow through. Boaz marries Ruth. Uh, their union is consummated, and God has blessed them with a son. Uh, and I, plain and simple there. Verses 14 through 17, it kind of switches gears to where it talks about Naomi and her blessing of this, of the child of the birth of Obed and everything. To me, basically, what those scriptures are, it's the follow through of this kinsman redeemer, because the whole purpose of that was that you know Naomi spoke of back when she was trying to get her daughter-in-laws to go their separate ways. It's like, I can't have a son for you. I can't, and this whole purpose of the kinsman redeemer uh, was so that Ruth basically has a child, and it would be like Naomi's to follow through with the line of Elimelech and so forth. Um, like I said, this commentary says it a whole lot better than I can. So I'm going to read a little bit about what it has to say about these verses with Naomi. We'll start in verse 15 where it says, May he also be to you a restorer of life. This says, um, After blessing the Lord and wishing fame on Ruth's son, the neighborhood women direct their attention to Naomi. They desire that Obed function as a restorer of life for her. God would work through Ruth's son to restore Naomi's soul. Obed would reinvigorate the joy and happiness that she had lost due to the tragedies of her life. So, back in chapter 1, the loss of her husband and the loss of her two sons. And when she comes back, comes back to Bethlehem, that the Lord had treated her so unfairly, and she was not, not very happy. Uh, but the birth of Obed brings her back this joy that she had. Um, he would reignite the spark in her life, which is a common effect that children have on their grandparents. Not only would Obed restore Naomi's soul, he would provide for her physical needs in her old age. She would, as he grows and everything, even, you know, she's no longer, they're no longer in that poverty state. So her needs are now being taken care of and everything. It's all being done. Um, See, the sustainer of her old age means that her needs and her necessities will be taken care of through the birth of Obed. Then the other part of that verse, the women go on to say, "For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Ruth has become the heroine of the story. No one would be celebrating without her sacrifice of love. If she would have gone back to her people, none of this would have taken place. Uh, the women joyously proclaim that what an asset Ruth truly was to Naomi by the love that she showed by coming back and taking care of her and all of that. Let's see. What's her name? 180. Okay. Ah. The neighborhood women complimented Ruth by saying that she was she has been better to Naomi than 7 sons. Such lofty praise is significant for 3 reasons. One, one person is better than 7. A daughter-in-law is better than sons. 3, a Moabitess is better than Israelites. Each of these comparisons deserves a few comments. First, one person is better than 7 sons. The number 7 symbolizes perfection in the ancient world. So then several passages refer to 7 sons. That is like the ideal number. Ruth's descendant, David, was judged better than his older brothers, the seventh son of Jesse. In addition, he was placed in the honored seventh position of a foreshortened genealogy of Jesse's sons. So, in other words, 7 has meaning to. We see that it can mean a lot of things throughout Scripture. Let's see. Secondly, sons were treasured for the contributions they would make to the family. Sons were responsible for giving their parents an honorable burial. Ruth would do this for Naomi whenever she died. Moreover, yes, because it mentions that she was good to Naomi and to her to the dead, which means she helped bury her sons. Moreover, sons were responsible for taking care of their parents in their old age. which Ruth also did. Beyond this, sons were responsible for continuing the family name. Ruth also has fulfilled that responsibility with the birth of Obed. Then, thirdly, foreigners were usually looked down upon. Apparently, the women accepted Ruth as a proselyte to Israel's God. She was well known in Bethlehem for her sacrificial kindness toward Naomi and was truly a woman of excellence because her reputation, we've read in several scriptures that she was of good character, how she took care of Naomi. Um, then this little section here talks about her roles, which kind of goes along with what we just talked about with the seven sons. Uh, there are many different roles that are played by Ruth throughout this book. She is the daughter of her mother and father back in Moab. Ruth becomes the wife of Mahlon, and later she is his widow. Through this marriage, she becomes the daughter-in-law of Naomi, although Naomi simply calls her my daughter. Ruth plays Ruth takes the place of her dead husband as the breadwinner for Naomi. For all practical purposes, she is her son. Ruth plays the role of an attractive woman seeking a husband when she descends to the threshing floor. She eventually becomes the wife of Boaz and then the mother of Obed. So Ruth played a very important role in Naomi's life in order for her to get to the point that she is now to be receiving the type of praise that these women are giving to Naomi. Verses 16 and 17. Let's see, 16 and 17. They speak of then Naomi takes the child and cares for the child, and the women basically call Obed her son. Um, it's This is another explanation is that Naomi had a special relationship with the boy because of the Redeemer marriage, because of the process which resulted in his birth. He would become he would become the heir of Elimelech's estate and care for Naomi as a son would do. Um, some interest to see some points out of that relationship. Becomes a kind of son redeemer to Naomi. Boaz becomes a husband redeemer to Ruth. Mahlon becomes Obed's virtual father. Ruth replaces the sons of Naomi. Naomi becomes Obed's virtual mother. So that's kind of that kinsman redeemer process. Um, that is uh, pretty much all that I have for um, for chapter 4. Uh, I have enjoyed this study. We still have one more week to go. Next week will be a final conclusion of the whole book of Ruth. We'll be talking about how this relationship with Ruth and Boaz and Naomi and the kinsman redeemership, how it is compared to our relationship with Christ and how he redeems us. So that will be next week uh, for our conclusion to kind of tie everything together. Um, Something that crossed my mind. I guess it was last week, and I didn't know quite how to incorporate it in. But I listen to daily Bible reading on my phone when I walk, and so I decided that I was going to read the or listen to the parts about Ruth, and something that was brought out was that the setting of this story of Ruth and Boaz, it's set during the time of the judges, and at the end of Judges, we talked about how everybody did what they wanted to do, you know, and they most of the time they did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they just did whatever they wanted to. And so the fact that this story is right in the middle of that time frame of the judges where people are doing whatever it is they want to do. What does that sound like? Sounds like today. There are people all over the world doing whatever it is they want to do, doing evil in the sight of the Lord, not caring about God's commandments and how he expects us to live. That even though there's all of maybe majority of the world is in total chaos and it's doing all of this stuff, there's still a very there's a remnant, or there are still those that are obedient to God and to his commandments and are still following his his code of conduct on how we're supposed to behave and how we're supposed to live our lives. That even though the world around us is going crazy and doing whatever it is they want to do, this story of Ruth and Boaz should give us comfort and give us hope that as long as we continue to put God first in our lives and we follow through and obey his commandments and do what's right, then we'll be blessed by it. No matter what the world is doing around us, we can still follow God's word. We can still be godly people. And I thought that was, that I thought that was really good. I really liked that because it kind of reminded me of what's our world today. And there's nothing new under the sun, ladies. Uh, we read through these scriptures. These people are going through the same things we're going through. And you know, we all binge on Netflix or Hulu or watch. I've been I've been binging on some old 80 sitcoms or 80 series and 90 series and those kinds of things, and I have noticed that the same story plots and lines on those series, they're the same as what we're going through today. You know, the same issues of race, of different kinds of just things going on in the world. It's no different. Every decade we have these same we're going through the same stuff. Every generation we're having to go through all the same stuff. um you read through the scripture, they went through the same stuff we're going through. It's just circumstances may be a little bit different, but the one thing that we can definitely glean from Ruth is that if we put God first in our life and we choose to follow him, he will bless us. And we will come out on the other end of this uh being blessed beyond measure. So, um, like I said, we still got one more week to go. We'll have a final conclusion. I even may have a surprise for you uh, as well in our conclusion. But um, so no more assignments. But if you want to, it wouldn't hurt to go back, read through Ruth again before next week. And again, I thank you for staying with me and following me on this study of Ruth. And I hope to see you back next week for our conclusion. I'll see you later, ladies. Bye.